What is going on, guys? It's your boy Assassin back with another Titan PVE build. So today we are going to go over a endgame build that is suited for what I would call endgame activities. What is an endgame activity? That is going to be anything where you're likely to be underleveled, you're going up against really tanky, high health targets that do a lot of damage, or you're going into an area like the pit where even if the targets don't have a super huge amount of health, you're likely to get easily overwhelmed. Anything like that, probably legend mode on the sundial when that comes out. Anything like this, this is going to be the Titan build for you. And of course, we got to be rocking Helm of Saint 14 to go with the ultimate God mode Titan, Saint 14. Alright, so what this build is centered around is going to be a seasonal artifact mod called Tenderizer. This mod goes on your chest piece, and the perk says, staggering unstoppable champions temporarily boosts weapon damage for allied players. Now, this will not be directly impacting your damage, but it is a pretty massive buff to the damage for your allies. I have not done enough testing to know what the exact percentage is, but I know just from playing with it, it's got to be at least around 20 to 30% of a buff to your allies, and it lasts for a good 10 to 15 seconds. Now, in order to proc this, you have to have something that has unstoppable rounds on it. Now, if you do not have a scout rifle or a pulse rifle that you want to put unstoppable rounds on, you can use the seasonal exotic, the Symmetry. In alternate fire mode, it doesn't say this anywhere on the perk, but when you are in revolution mode, the alternate fire mode, these seeking projectiles are unstoppable rounds. So anything you hit with these that is unshielded is going to get staggered, and that will also proc Tenderizer if it's on a unstoppable champion. So if you do not have some scout rifle or pulse rifle or even a bow that you want to put unstoppable rounds on, then you can use the Symmetry. But you need this to proc Tenderizer. Now the other part of this build, why you are going to be a God mode Battle Master, you are going to control the entire battlefield, is because on top of this, we are also running Divinity. Divinity is the raid exotic from Garden of Salvation. There are plenty of builds out. Cactus has a really good build on how to acquire this weapon if you haven't yet. But the perk on it is Judgment. Sustained damage with this weapon envelops the target in a field that weakens and disrupts them. Strong against overload champions. So, side note, I think that's pretty nice that thus far the seasonal exotics all have some type of champion affecting ability. Divinity has disruption rounds, Symmetry has overload rounds, and then obviously the one from last season, the hand cannon sniper, Ariana's Vow, has the barrier piercing rounds. So what we're going to be doing is every time you come up against a unstoppable champion, you're going to hit it with an unstoppable shot. That is going to proc Tenderizer, which is going to give a 20 to 30% buff to all your allies. As soon as you're done with that, you're going to swap to Divinity and hit the boss with Divinity. It's going to make a giant crit spot on that boss, and it's going to give it a 30% debuff. So let's do some math here. Worst case scenario, we are buffing our allies by 20% and debuffing the enemy by 30%. That's a 50% damage increase. When I've run this in Legendary and Master Nightfalls this week, this shreds everything. Most of the time, a unstoppable champion, even if they're staggered and even if you use Divinity, it usually takes more than one shot. With this, once you've procced your Tenderizer, your allies don't even necessarily need to wait for the crit spot to pop up. As soon as you hit the enemy with this Judgment and you give them the debuff, one shot, dead. Most enemies in the game, you don't even need an Izanagi shot. when I was running this in Sundial, yeah, I was using the symmetry, and every time an unstoppable champion came out, I procced Revolution, stunned it, and my teammates melted that thing. We were doing little baby damage to it beforehand, and my teammates just melted it. So, let's go over the perks. So obviously, first we have Helm of Saint 14 with Starless Night. Ward of Dawn blinds enemies and grants an overshield, guarding blinds. So when you pop your bubble with Helm of Saint 14, any enemy that comes into that bubble is going to get blinded, and they're going to start walking backwards. This is very beneficial in activities like the raid. So if you, let's say you're protecting a conflux, you run out of your buff, you can't take the shields down, and nobody's around that can help you for a second, you can pop your bubble and blind the enemies. And if you pop it in front of the conflux that you're defending, it's going to blind them and they're going to walk away from it. They're going to back up. So it can buy you some time. So on our Helm of Saint 14, we have a recovery mod and we have special ammo finder. The reason we have special ammo finder specifically is because we are rocking Divinity in this build. Otherwise, if you were going to use the alternate form of this build that I'm going to show off at the end, you would be using Izanagi's, and you would probably want to do sniper rifle ammo finder. It's a little bit cheaper to do sniper rifle ammo finder, but special ammo finder specifically will work for Divinity, and it gives you a pretty decent amount of ammo when you pick those up. So on to the Gauntlets, we have another recovery mod. We have enhanced rifle loader, because we're going to use a scout rifle and a trace rifle. So technically, all of those count as rifles, so that applies to all of them. And then fastball, that's kind of just personal preference. That's what I decided to put on there. But, you know, you could do something like grenade launcher, loader, you know, you have options here. It doesn't necessarily have to be fastball. The chest piece, the most important part of this build. We have a recovery mod. We have enhanced unflinching rifle aim, and this does apply to trace rifles, so this will make it easier for you to keep Divinity procced on your target, even while you're being shot from other directions. And then, of course, Tenderizer. So, yeah, this mod is, I believe, very underrated right now. I have not seen a lot of videos on it, and I'm kind of waiting for Error to go over what exactly the percentage is on this, but I know it's got to be at least 20 to 30%. So on the boots, we have a recovery mod and special ammo scavenger, so that way when we do get these small bricks from the special ammo finder, it will give us a little bit more ammo. And then on the mark, we don't really have anything particularly special. We've got a recovery mod, we've got distribution to try and help us get our bubble back faster, and we have a special finisher. This is really just kind of to help your allies, help yourself in a pinch. You can do a finisher and get some special ammo. If you're going up to the boss fight, say in a Master Nightfall, and you just had to use all of your special to take down the champion beforehand, you can take a small ad, finish them, and get some of your ammo back. That is at a cost of 1/3 of your super, so kind of up to you as to whether you... I don't use finishers very often, specifically because of that, but good in a pinch. And obviously we're running edgewise, so that way we can have arc and solar. This is the build that I would use to go into the Nightfall. The only difference I would make to go into Master Nightmare hunts is I would be equipping some of the Nightmare mods here. So like I would take off distribution and I would put on Supreme Nightmare Crusher, and then most of my stuff is void, so can't really do too much there. But here on the chest piece, this is solar, so I would probably take off enhanced unflinching rifle aim, to put on Supreme Nightmare Breaker. You know, those general changes in mods so that you can do more damage to nightmares for the Nightmare Hunt. So, this build is super strong if you are in a group. But I hear you asking, what exactly is the point of Tenderizer if I'm going to run things solo? Say, if you're going to go for a solo clear of the dungeon. In that case, I would change the build just slightly. I'd make a few adjustments. So here, instead of using Divinity to weaken for your allies, because you won't have any, I would use something with anti-barrier rounds. And I like pulse rifles. It's a pretty good roll, Horror's Least. And then I would use Izanagi's. This is far and away the highest damaging weapon in the game. Can one-shot most yellow bars, few shots to most bosses. Definitely very strong. And then in addition to that, I would take off the Helm of Saint 14 and I would put on Doomfang Pauldrons. Doomfang Pauldrons have a perk. Void melee kills give super energy. So every time that you have your melee ability and you punch something, you are going to get close to a fourth of your super, if not slightly more. This is the key right here. This is how you solo the pit. In that third encounter that everybody struggles with, this is how you get your super back so that you can keep popping your bubble to protect you from the boomers. And then on the chest piece, I would make a slight change as well. Obviously, Tenderizer is not going to help us very much. So, I would take off Tenderizer and take off the Unflinching Rifle Aim, and I would put on Breach Resonator. Breach Resonator is also another seasonal artifact mod. It grants melee and grenade energy on final blows with shield-piercing weapons, or when a member of your fire team shuts down a barrier champion's ability. Shield-piercing weapons. That's why I would put on a pulse rifle or a scout, depending on what you want to use, with anti-barrier rounds, because these are now shield-piercing weapons. So with those two mods combined, every time that you kill something with your pulse rifle or your scout rifle, it's going to give you back melee energy. And then with Doomfang Pauldrons, when you melee something with that, you are going to get back about a fourth of your super. If you kill it. One other option, I'm still debating it, I have not played with it actually, is this mod right here, the Unstoppable Schwarzschild Condenser. They could not have made that name any more ridiculous. It costs 2 energy, void melee ability, stagger unshielded enemy combatants. Now the issue with this is that your melee ability isn't like ranged. It's not something you can throw when you're on your void class, and it tends to not be super effective against really tanky bosses, which is what you would want to use it for. So as you see, I still have one upgrade slot available. I've been kind of debating between this one and trying out Guardian Angel. But yeah, that is the only other adjustment that I would make. This is pretty much the build that I use every time I go into the pit to do a solo run. You've got your Izanagis to take down the big knights with the swords. You've got a pulse rifle with anti-barrier ranger to give you back your melee so that you can get back your bubble to protect yourself. And then I usually use edgewise because the witches all have solar shields in there. But yeah, this is the Battle Master build. Specifically when you're talking about using it this way, because you're not actually doing a whole lot of damage yourself. But guaranteed, if you run this build, whatever fire team you are with, they are going to be so grateful because everything is going to die so much easier. With this build, you basically control the flow of how you go through the activity. You've got your bubble, which everybody knows when a Titan pops a bubble, go to the bubble. It is a giant calling card. Same thing with Divinity. We've all been there. You've been in an activity and you see some enemy with a giant penance bubble around them, a giant shoot me now sign. With this build, you are very, very readily and easily controlling the flow of battle. That's why I call this the God Mode Battle Master build. And just so you guys are aware, I kind of covered this in the last video, but want to re-emphasize it here. I really like to have my resilience around 6 or 7. There is a video that I believe Cool Guy put up for PvP, where he did some testing on the resilience values, and having a resilience of at least 6 stops Thorn from being a 3-tap. It gives you just enough resilience where you can survive and make your enemy have to do one more shot on you. It makes the fall off distance for hand cannons much steeper. They have to be much closer to you to be able to get the same time to kill. So, and I personally have felt the same thing in PVE. Having a resilience of at least 6 kind of really makes a difference in terms of enemies being able to kill you. There's a lot of situations where I know if my resilience was 5 or lower, I would have died. But I managed to get around a corner with just a sliver of health, and then having my recovery stat as high as possible, I'm able to just sit there for just a second and immediately my health is back and I'm back in the fight. So even if all of these enemies in PvE are charging you, if you can make it around the corner and sit there for just a second, you can get enough health where you can go back at them. So I don't really pay any attention to mobility. It's the most useless stat to me. Maybe on a hunter. If you're a hunter main, props to you, but I don't like you bouncy fools. It is my mission to kill as many of you as possible every time I go into the Crucible. Discipline, this build isn't necessarily using grenades all that much. I do have on the magnetic grenade just because I feel like it does a little bit more damage to a boss. It's more consistent than Void Wall. Void Wall overall will do more damage if you can get an enemy to sit in it. But, you know, sometimes the enemies are floating or they kind of like to dodge, especially when you throw a grenade at them. Magnetic grenades are just very consistent. So that's why I have that there. Intellect around 5 works pretty well for me. Not super duper important. The neutral game with Tenderizer on this build is going to give almost the same buff as your bubble does. So, you know, kind of just up to you. And the bubble, you know, will work obviously at any time Weapons of Light can be procced instead of just when you have an unstoppable champion. And then the strength mod, again, not really, this build isn't really built around using your melee ability all that much, more around staggering things and taking advantage of the Tenderizer buff with Divinity to just control the field. So yeah, that is the God Mode Battle Master Titan Endgame build. Obviously, this is a PvE build, not really going to work too well in the Crucible. There's no unstoppable champions in the Crucible, even though some of them think they are. Moving on. So, that is it for today's build, guys. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to like and subscribe. Please check out my next video. I'm going to take this very build into the sundial just to kind of show it off a little bit. And yeah, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the content, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.